Hello and welcome to our kitchen table. We are sitting here desperately trying to keep it together to record this goddamn introduction to the podcast. We've got a serious case of the giggles. Ashlyn's cackling. I can't get through this. This is our fifth or sixth take, I think.
Oh, easy. Tomorrow is Price's birthday, and our neighbors just delivered the most delightful, amazing coconut cake, and we all had a slice, and it was so good, and we're in such a good mood we can't stop laughing.
I blame it on the cake. Yeah.
It was the cake for sure.
Coconut cream. Can't beat it.
Not how naturally funny we both are.
God, no. God, no.
Okay, let's do it. We can focus.
Today we're sitting down to talk about relationships, following up last week's conversation about violence and abuse in relationships. We're toning it down a little bit, and we're having a conversation about relationships in general. I am here with your therapist, my wife, and my name is Price.
And what's the name of the podcast?
I knew you were going to ask me.
Just do it. You can do it.
The podcast name is I Married Your Therapist.
Cool. Hi, I'm your therapist. I'm Ash. Please keep in mind that even though this is a podcast about mental health and therapy, it's not the same thing as or a replacement for therapy.
Coconut cake was really goddamn good, you guys.
I think I saved it.
You pulled it back in.
I did.
It back in.
Okay, let's go.
Well, before we start, I have an announcement.
Yes.
You were featured on another podcast. You were interviewed.
I went on How to Be a Human Being with Kyle, and I had the most amazing time. We had a great conversation about anxiety. I just thought he was such a phenomenal host. It was the best conversation. I think it's really helpful, and I'm so excited for people to hear it. Please go check it out.
I got jealous listening to another man host you on a podcast.
We're not married. I'm not married to all of the people I do a podcast with. I just think you should know.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
No, it was a great podcast. It's like a 45-minute episode where he's just talking to you about anxiety and how to deal with anxiety, and you provide a lot of really good insight for anybody who just wants to better understand why their body produces anxiety, what the purpose of it is, how to deal with it, some easy and quick techniques for like dealing with anxiety. It was a good episode. He's a good interviewer too.
Oh yeah. It was so fun. I had the best time. Definitely go check it out.
Yeah, that's How to Be a Human Being. Which, interestingly, I don't know if this is a purposeful connection, but that's the name of one of my favorite albums by the Glass Animals, is How to Be a Human Being.
I was listening to that album today.
Oh, really? Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but anyways, it's a great podcast. You should check it out.
Amazing.
Okay, so let's jump into it. I wanted to sit down with you and talk about relationships because last week's conversation was heavy. Talking about violence and abuse in relationships is a serious topic. It's something that happens all the time. But it's also not something that happens to all of us. You know, like when you're in a violent sort of situation, you're no longer in a good, healthy relationship that's like worth working on. You're in a situation you need to escape from.
Right. And then for everybody else who is in a long-term relationship, even the healthiest, best, happiest relationships are all going to have their own issues. And that's what I tend to talk about on a regular basis with people. Yeah,
thank God. That's that's where most of us are at, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The violence situation is like worth discussing, but I think that today's episode will be more universally applicable to people because most people have been, will be, or are in a relationship, and they're fucking hard.
Yeah, they're hard and they're also different, and I think there's something to learn every time you're in a new relationship. And so hopefully today we're getting to cover some things that are really applicable to all relationships, regardless of kind of what stage you're in.
So before we dive into some specifics, I see you have your handy dandy list with you.
I do.
I want to talk high level. For starters, you don't specifically see couples.
I have seen a handful of couples, but I primarily work just with individuals. But so many of those individuals do end up talking about relationships at some point.
Because the relationships that they are in are relevant to the issues they're facing in their life in some way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you spend a good bit of your life with somebody, you're thinking about somebody, interacting with them, it's going to come into your life at some point. Also, people getting into a new relationship, thinking about leaving their relationship, all of those things are happening for people all the time. And yeah, it's such a joy to get to talk about those things. I love talking about relationships in session.
My mom loves this analogy, and I love it too. It's the tea bag analogy. It's
yeah.
it's the concept of your heart is like a tea bag, and the situations that you find yourself in are like hot water.
Yeah.
And the hot water is just going to disperse what is already in your heart. The situations that you find yourself in are just going to extract what's already in you.
Right.
And so finding yourself in difficult situations is like hot water, right? And relationships can provide a lot of hot water.
Yeah, relationships can provide a lot of hot water, and then life does too, and it'll certainly draw out what's in the relationship, what it's made of.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, as you're working on you through therapy, one of the best ways to measure your growth and progress is how you respond to the relationship. One of your most consistent sources of hot water, relationships, the relationships that you're in, right?
Absolutely. It's touching on so many things about how we view the world and how we view ourselves. And yeah, it's definitely going to draw those things out.
Yeah. So what are some universal observations that you have? Because you see a diverse group of clients. You see a wide range of different types of folks, but you're talking about relationships with most of them.
Yeah.
What are those conversations like? Are people coming to the table trying to like talk shit about their significant other and just trying to get you to say, "Oh man, that sounds so awful. You sound perfect. I can't believe they would do that." Or you know, does there seem to be like a bent on how those conversations go, or what are some observations that you have?
Overwhelmingly, people come in to talk about the hard or bad things happening within their good relationships, that they spend a lot of time feeling like they need to explain to me, no, this is good and happy and healthy, but here's this thing that's tough for us. And it makes sense. I think a lot of our, conceptualization around what therapy must be like is people coming in talking about bad, awful, maybe even abusive relationships. And so one of my favorite things to get to do as a therapist, I almost always do it during an intake, especially if we're talking about family or partners, is to say, as your therapist, I love the people that you love. And so if you tell me that you love your partner and that things are good, I love them too. That's great. We can just start from that foundation. You don't have to explain any more to me. If there's something that's relevant, go for it. But I'm just going to take it at face value that like you love and care about this person. That's the approach that we're taking. Now let's talk about the thing that's hard and bad. And I'll come at that with the foundation that like overwhelmingly this is a great relationship.
I love that you kind of level set with them. I am where you are.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to get me to like this person.
Yes.
We can just talk about what's hard.
Yep.
We can talk about what's not working, and I'll just be with you at the place that like... I mean, just the fact that you're here and working on this and talking about it means you want things to work with this person, right? So that's a way you're loving them.
Yeah, absolutely. And over time, I'm definitely getting to hear more of the good, more of the ways that person is a support. Usually that's why the issue is so disruptive in the first place. It's like this and this and this are good, and now we're dealing with this thing, and it's preventing me from having all these good things that are a part of our relationship, or... I'd like to have more of these things that are good.
I'm reminded of kind of over-the-top Lord of the Rings movie quote, "There's good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for."
It would be a Lord of the Rings quote.
Of course it would. Yeah. And it's worth fighting for.
Exactly.
There's good in this relationship, Ashlyn, and it's worth fighting for.
That's right.
But I think that if you're like a significant other or you're the significant other and your partner's in therapy, you're like, I wonder if they're talking about me. Well, I hope so. Yeah. I hope that like when you're in therapy, Ashlyn, I'm coming up sometimes because I want to be like relevant to the things that you're thinking about and interested in and working towards. You know?
Exactly. You're a huge part of my life, and you're impacting all of the things that touched my life in some way.
Yeah, and ditto, right back at you.
Thanks.
But I do think that like you've been one of the best parts of measuring progress, and like talking about my relationship with Ashlyn is different in this way over the years, you know, and it's a great way for me because you're here every day, you know, and so
that's a good part of that, like teabag and hot water analogy, is that I think that a lot of times the state of our relationship has really reflected the ways that you and I have just grown as individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into some more specific items then. What are some things that clients are coming to you to talk about, and what are some general pieces of advice that you can give your clients and that you could give our listeners, like ways that they can solidify and improve the relationships that they're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you and I were just talking about, I can't remember now if it was today or yesterday, but we're
getting old. We're getting so fucking old. They all run together.
Oh my God. I was making some joke that nobody comes to therapy if they're talking about relationship issues, nobody comes to therapy to talk about themselves. They come to talk about their partner.
That's so funny.
And it can definitely be that when somebody's in a relationship that doesn't feel good, that they're really clearly able to see the things that their partner's doing that's contributing to that. And it's hard to see their own things. And even you and I had this experience when you were starting counseling, which is that the issues that you were facing were so impactful in my life that I was very clearly able to see them. But as I was talking to your therapist, it was hard for me to see the ways that I was feeding into that. And so even though, you know, we're starting off with that, you love your partner, all of those things, that's still true. But when we're talking about an issue, sometimes it can be really easy to see this other side. And I didn't realize that I was doing a lot of things to make myself miserable. And because I felt like I was doing them for or about you, I blamed those things on you. And I was doing things to make myself miserable.
What do you mean? Like, what are you? Give us an example. What are you talking about specifically?
Like in our relationship?
Yeah, sure.
So
blow me out of the water on the show. Expose me. Tell the people.
So when
I do want to mention that I'm 3 years sober.
That's right.
From alcohol at this point.
Speaking of alcohol, when you were drinking, I was doing a lot of things that were actually codependent, but I felt like I needed to keep your life in order. So I was making sure to wake you up and get you out the door when you had a hangover. I was bringing you inside if you fell asleep on the front porch. I was making sure you got to bed and had aspirin and did all those things. And I resented you for doing those things.
Fair.
I resented you for the fact that felt like I had to take care of you in those ways. And your therapist was able to very kindly point out to me how I was doing those things and they were making me miserable. And also they were preventing you from being able to see your own stuff anyway. And I think that can apply in a lot of situations.
That explains why my first meeting at AA was like, hi, my name's Bryce, and my wife's making me an alcoholic and keeping me an alcoholic.
I knew it.
No, that's so fair. And I think we all do that to an extent, right? Like or at least people who aren't aware of what's happening can very easily fall into those sorts of patterns of codependency, you know, where it's like, I need you to need me. I need to be needed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, something that we learn about the way that like attachment issues work is that when you've had an issue somewhere else in your life, you'll recreate that situation in the safe place of your relationship so that you can try to solve it. So you'll recreate this pattern that's happened in the past, and you hope that like, when I do it here, it's going to fix it. You're not doing it intentionally. It's unintentionally, subconsciously happening, but that you will subconsciously create this situation.
Oh,
again
is that
and
why
again
I've been
and
trying to
again.
get you to cheat on my mom? Oh, that explains a lot.
I guess that does explain that. instance, I felt like I had to caretake a lot for my parents, and I was creating this situation where I wasn't doing the drinking, but I was creating this situation where my role was taking care of you, and you depended on me for that.
You did a really good job.
Thanks. But you didn't ask me to do those things, and it wasn't helpful for me to do those things for you. And I was resenting you for that, but I had created this situation where that was my role in the relationship. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. And it doesn't fix it like that. Like the fact that this other person is there and that they love and care about us isn't going to automatically resolve these things. So really getting down to what is our need here, what's happening, and how am I reliving what's always happened?
Sometimes you got to let broken behaviors break, you know, and you've got to let people live with the consequences of their own actions. And like when you withdrew your support, I'm using quotation marks, when you withdrew your support from me drinking, it made the drinking a significant, my drinking became significantly harder to deal with overnight.
Yeah.
And it helped spark the change that my life needed.
Those things, this isn't like a promise about that, but for us in our situation, that happened so quickly back to back that I quit supporting your drinking by making sure you never had any consequences, and almost immediately you quit drinking.
Yeah, because then I was like, oh shit, I have consequences now.
Oh shit, I can't make it to work, or I wake up outside.
Yeah, user experience will differ, but that was our story for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of that is identifying these key things.
And that's funny because it's all about your previous story, right? Like what you're coming into the relationship with. Like you were living through, like reliving the situation with your family where you were so relied on.
Yes.
And you were asserting yourself in that same sort of role in our relationship.
Yes. And here's the funny thing about how just reliving that doesn't fix it, is that what I was trying to prevent was things feel out of control when I have to take care of somebody else. When it's my job to take care of my parents, things feel out of control. So I was trying to take care of everything so that things wouldn't feel out of control. But things were out of my control. I didn't have any control over your drinking and the choices that you made. And as scary as it felt to let that go, it actually was the resolution to that issue because I was in control of me. I went to the bed for the first time on time in a long time and got a good night's sleep and tried not to worry about other things. And then I felt better.
Yeah.
I was in control of that decision. I got to decide what to do. I didn't stress about this other thing. That actually gave me control back. It wasn't the reliving of that scenario. It was encountering an opportunity to relive it and to choose to do something different.
And I think that small shift gave me the autonomy of like, Price is his own fucking person and he gets to participate in this relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like he gets to be worthy of being in this relationship on his own. Like I'm not going to drag him to that. He gets to make that decision because it's his decision.
Right. You had a common complaint then was like not feeling respected by me and feeling mothered by me and all of those things. And then you had to show up and you had the opportunity to show up and play your own role in the relationship instead of what I made it to be.
Yeah. Definitely not blaming you for my decisions, but it certainly like opened that door for me in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah, no, we both got to have control back of the way that we were involved in the relationship. And so that's a really common thing that will happen is that people are playing out the roles that they've always played and not seeing how it's not fixing the issue.
Right.
That it is kind of a turning inward and focusing on yourself, which is why even individual therapy can be so powerful for relationships.
I think that's kind of so specific to our story, right? The caretaking from your childhood to us. What are some other ways that you see people being codependent in their relationships? What are some more common ways that we might see that creeping up?
I see a lot of the caretaking happening in different ways. Maybe one partner is very organized and they are the one who's solely responsible for getting their partner up and out the door, for paying the bills, for doing all those sorts of things. And then they come to resent their partner for not being an adult in the relationship. And I do see it as a resolution when they start to say, hey, I can think of a large number of clients who've had exactly that same sort of issue. And when they've pulled back and said, listen, you get to be an adult now. Like, I'm going to step back and just worry about my own things. Their partner does start to grow up. Their partner does start to be able to take responsibility for stuff, and maybe isn't the same way that you would have done it. But that it's the same sort of experience that you had where suddenly you got to be an active participant in your own relationship.
I think the earliest example I ever saw of this was this kind of thing. I was in an ROTC program in high school.
What is that?
It's like it's something that nerds do. It was called Civil Air Patrol. It was a branch off of the Air Force, and it lets like kids like participate in military sort of programs. Like I got opportunities to like fly single prop planes with a pilot, and I got like to tour military bases. It was a good experience overall. I was it was like a student leadership position, and I was responsible for organizing our weekly meetings and like setting the agenda and stuff. And we asked a different participant to bring snacks for everybody, because we took like a 10-minute snack break because we were kids. It was great. And one of the cadets was showing up, and his dress was sloppy. He didn't seem to be enjoying himself. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't participating. I'm pretty sure his parents were making him come. And so I think my mom suggested, because I was talking to her about this, and this kid like reported to me. This all feels very strange to like talk about now, like years later. But he like reported to me, and I thought he was a nice guy. And my mom was like, put him in charge of the snack list. So we put him in charge of the snack list. He was responsible for getting people to sign up and making sure that people were reminded. And this kid did a 180. He went from like not engaged to like he had something that he was in charge of, and he nailed it. And we complimented him on nailing it. And I've always seeing that happen on such a small scale has always been like, when you give somebody some responsibility, they will rise to the occasion. And I think that when you quit like parenting a partner, that you give them the opportunity to rise to the occasion. And if they don't, that says a lot about them.
Yeah,
right?
Then they're certainly not going to be the partner for you. You guys are going to go through all sorts of things together that you need an actual equal partner. And but yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the times people do want to rise to the occasion. They do want to be active.
Did you like my Civil Air Patrol anecdote?
I did.
I'm really good at this podcast.
Okay, so it reminded me of another thing that I think that you and I do really well in our relationship, that we've grown into doing well in our relationship, and that it's something that I teach to my clients as well. It's being really, I was going to say aggressive, thanking your partner all of the time. You and I mean, it's even the joke, the way that we end the podcast about thank you for your time, but we really speak to each other like that. And sometimes you and I will be like cooking and cleaning together, and it will be hilarious how many times we're saying thank you for this, thank you for that, and we'll start to laugh about it. But it's important to feel acknowledged in your relationship. It's important to feel seen for the things that you're doing. And you were talking about thanking that kid for doing the snacks and really complimenting him. And it matters that our partners don't feel taken for granted.
And you are taken for granted if you're not thanked.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not about how I feel. It's that I am literally I literally am taken for granted.
Right.
If you're not telling me thank you for the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that it's so easy to feel that way.
And what's interesting is you and I have a really clear division of labor around the house. You are more organized than I. You pay all of the bills, but that is something that we've agreed on. Like that is your area of responsibility. I have other things that I'm responsible for. Yes,
I will die if I cut the grass. My allergies will kill me, and you always cut the grass.
Yeah, and I will die if I have to pay a bill.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's another thing. Doing a division of labor along what are the easier things for you to do. It is such a pain for me to cook It's such an overwhelming thought process for me most of the time. And you cook most of our meals, and it's no big deal for me to clean up. I love getting to do that. It's such a great exchange. And it's not been, I think that playing back and forth with figuring out what to do with that division of labor.
And when we have guests over, it's all, Price, you're cooking so good, but nobody's ever been like, Ashlyn, these dishes are so goddamn clean.
They would notice if I didn't do the dishes, though, you know?
Oh, that's fair. That is fair.
So that brings me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is another issue that I see in couples is not responding to each other's bids. Do you want to explain what bids are?
Dr. John Gottman up in here, huh?
Look at you.
Yeah. I remember. I listen.
You listen so well.
Okay, Dr. John Gottman is a psychologist / couples therapist, right? And he's like leading in the field. He's been writing books and conducting research. I'm looking at you with question marks in my eyes.
Yeah,
like,
he
yes?
does a lot of he does a lot of research. He sees couples,
and he's written a lot of really good, well-known books about being in a relationship, basically. Right?
Yeah, and always the same. He writes again and again and again about these same couple of topics, and one of them is responding to bids. And so, a bid is any time your partner's trying to get your attention. And the bid that he uses in his book, and I think it's so great and so silly and honest to God, so true to life in a long-term committed relationship, which is, look at that bird.
Wow, look at that bird.
A bid is any time we're trying to like engage with our partner. And the thing is that a lot of people miss bids because it is something like, hey, look at that bird. It's me 800 times a day going, Price, look at that cat. Look at the same goddamn cat that I tell you to look at 800 other times a day.
You'll come into my office with a picture of a cat that's laying in the same position.
Spot that he lays in every single day.
Yeah, look at this picture. I'm like, God damn it. Like, what are you doing?
But what's really happening is that bids are trying to connect with our partner.
Well, that's less about the cat photo, and it's more about just having a moment with me.
Yeah,
right.
It's sharing that point.
You should remind me of that the next time you come in with a goddamn cat photo.
I will. Don't worry. But yeah, exactly. It's, I had a moment. I saw the cat. It brought me a little bit of joy, and I want to connect with you over that moment that I had. Another way that partners will miss bids is, for instance, you play a lot of video games. I don't know anything about video games. I've never really played them, but you wanting to tell me something about the video game or show me something that happened.
Could you not lean into the video game narrative? I'm trying to be like smart and educated.
You play video games no, I'm kidding. But it is one area where I don't have any overlap with you in it. And when you're showing me something about that, and I have exactly this conversation with individuals all of the time, is when your boyfriend's trying to show you the thing in his video game, you don't have to know about the video game. You don't have to care about it. Your partner's trying to connect with you. You
just have to remain trapped in that moment, that agonizing moment for a few seconds. Pretend you give a shit.
But what?
No, you're trying to say, like, you don't have to be interested in the game, but you are interested in your boyfriend, right?
And what you need to notice is that it's your partner being interested in you and saying, hey, this thing brought me some joy. I want to now have a moment of connection over that.
Well, first of all, you just assumed their gender, okay? Because girls like video games too. Hate to break it to you, okay?
That's totally true. I have lots of gamer girl clients. I love it.
I'm just kidding. I think it's a good point. And Gottman has really reshaped my thinking on this. And by Gottman, I mean you, quoting Gottman. But it's gotten to the point that you'll just come in and you'll say, I'm making a bid.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to say next, which is that I think that this point is so helpful. It's helpful for you and your partner to know what a bid is, so that, because we spent a lot of time early on reminding each other when it was a bid, literally saying, hey, look at this thing, pay attention to this thing, let me show you this thing, and the other person wouldn't respond, and they didn't realize what they were doing. It was a busy moment, it was whatever, and we got to say, hey, this is my bid.
Yeah.
And we got so much better at paying attention. And yes, I will still come into your office quite frequently and be like, I have a bid.
Yeah, it still happens. Yeah, it's usually cat photo related.
It's basically always cat photo related. Or it's a meme you do not care about. But thank you for paying attention to my bids.
Man, you'll see a Lord of the Rings meme and you'll be like, Price will love this. And it's like the most normie fucking meme. Somebody just like watched the trailer to the movie. They haven't even like read the books or the expanded universe shit. And,
Here's the thing.
you did that today. That happened earlier.
No, that's because it was a therapy Lord of the Rings meme. That was about me.
That was your bid.
My bid.
I get it.
And I just thanked you for paying attention to my bids, because thanking your partner is another part of that.
Thank you for thanking me. I hate this. I hate this loop. No, we do say thank you a lot. That happens quite frequently. That is a learned behavior, and it is learned from really the satisfaction of like being acknowledged when you do something nice, because like the dishes don't get done on accident,
Right.
and dinner doesn't make itself. And while those are our jobs,
Yep.
we've agreed I cook, you clean.
Yep.
And that arrangement works out really well for both of us. It is nice to be like told thank you.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely. And it makes it easier to go about the same mundane tasks that you have to do as part of life when you have somebody else seeing you do those things and thanking you for that, commenting on the fact that you did it, that like, I know it had to be done, but you did it, and that's a relief to me, and it really does support our relationship for you to do those things.
Bids are saying, hey, I want some attention. I want, and then thanking someone is, hey, I see you. I'm giving you that attention.
Yeah.
I'm giving you some acknowledgement right now. It reminds me of that that history biopic, Mad Max Fury Road. Where they would scream "Witness me" before like a suicidal attack and like
Right.
spray paint their mouths chrome, you
Yes.
know, which is like really toxic, really bad to do. Like you should not be spray painting your own mouth. But then they would go die in battle. So I guess OSHA didn't really need to be a part of that conversation.
We're getting really deep into it.
But it's like, witness me. Witness me. I'm here in your life. Witness me.
Yeah.
I don't have any spray paint, but witness me.
Something that I say to clients all the time too is how much we need to be witnessed as humans, that our emotions need to be witnessed, that our experiences need to be witnessed. And so much of our day is going about just the tasks we have to do. And those things need to be witnessed as well. And that's something that we get to do for our partners, and definitely ought to be doing for our partners long term.
You need that. Listener, you need that. So does your partner.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, and it's a great thing to model as well. Tell your partner that you need that, or that you want that, or that you want to do it. But then you take personal responsibility. You do it. Thank them every time they're the person who opens up the door. Thank them when they take out the trash. Thank them when they do. It adds so much ease to the day-to-day of your relationship. And if you are doing it, your partner is so much more likely to do it back.
yeah, it becomes normal.
Yeah, it becomes part of the routine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's a huge shift.
And it
just
also
in, like,
reframes your own mindset towards your partner, where you start appreciating the shit that they do.
Yeah.
And that can really help overcome some real frustration. And when you approach a partner to say, hey, this behavior is really bothering me, they're a lot less likely to write you off as just like some angry asshole.
Right.
If you're putting up some goodwill into the relationship by like acknowledging and thanking them on a regular basis, if that's your norm, then
Yep.
it's much easier for me to approach and like say, this isn't working.
Yeah, that doesn't have to be the moment where you're trying to firm up the relationship before you say, hey, this thing is bothering me. That firm foundation is there. You can easily call them back to that and say, and here's this thing that's happening. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay, what's next on your list? What do you have for us?
So another thing I talk with clients a lot about is how important it is to talk about an argument after the argument is over. So many times clients will argue usually about the same things over and over and over again. That's super common in relationships. And when I say, did you talk about it after? They say no. it ended. Maybe they even apologized, but the argument stopped, and so we didn't talk about it anymore.
We didn't resolve the issue.
Well,
and we're
that's
gonna
exactly
keep coming
what
back to
happened.
it. Yeah.
We didn't resolve the issue.
Yeah.
Because arguments are rarely resolved, especially when you're bad at arguing. Arguments are rarely resolved within the argument.
Just get fucking good at arguing. I don't know what the problem is.
That takes talking about the argument when you're no longer arguing.
Yeah. And why is that?
That's because during an argument, we tend to get really activated, which means that our nervous system is starting to kick in and go into those fight or flight, freeze, fawn responses.
If you'd like to learn more, check out the previous episode on the 4 trauma responses.
Our other episode on the trauma responses. Absolutely. But yeah, your system will start to go into those responses when you're activated. You start responding as though there's a threat. And we're not our best selves. But the other thing that's happening is that our logical thinking, problem solving brain goes offline. When we get activated, that's no longer engaged. We're back in our survival response. And you can't problem solve together. You're going to have a much harder time hearing the other person's perspective and really thinking it through. You're going to have a harder time getting your own perspective across. So many times I feel like you and I got to the end of an argument, and when we finally explained what we were talking about, it felt so different from what I heard you say when we were fighting.
That was always my least favorite part of arguing with you, is that you'd want to break it down and like, oh, we're on the same side. I'm like, fuck, why am I so angry?
Well, that's another good thing. That wasn't on my list, but I'm glad that you said that. We're almost never arguing about the thing that we're arguing about. We tend to be arguing about something else. We tend to be arguing about something that's deeper and more values-based. If we're arguing about money, we're arguing about security. If we're arguing about doing dishes, I'm arguing about like being cared about and feeling seen and valued in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so when we keep having the same arguments, it's because we're never really hearing what's going underneath. And it's so hard to get curious and to figure out. Most of the time you guys are probably on the same page if you don't talk about it when you're calmed down.
And that's harder. It's harder to talk about it when you're calmed down because that usually requires some level of vulnerability.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is that almost all of the things we do during an argument aren't about being vulnerable. They're putting up defenses. They're putting the other person down. They're raising our voice. We're doing things that make us a threat. They make us kind of intimidating. And we're not really sharing what's going on underneath. We're not being vulnerable. And then we never learn what's actually at the root of it. You
can't even access those feelings within yourself when you're arguing. Like when you're activated like that, you're not even like, that's not even conscious. You're not even thinking about the fact that like, he doesn't do the fucking dishes. I don't feel seen. You're like, this bastard doesn't do the dishes because he's a dirty bastard.
Right. Right.
The thing you're arguing about is just the thing you're arguing about in that moment. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be able to talk about it when you're calm is such a big deal, and that's what's going to break the argument cycle. And there's a good chance that getting to talk about it when you're calm will be exactly the thing that teaches you how to argue better. You'll be better at figuring those things out. You'll be better at recognizing the pattern with your partner, and you'll stop feeling the weight of every single other time you've argued about the same thing.
Yeah.
That's a big relief. Argue about the thing in the moment.
We had a good friend, shout him out, Stephen Freeman.
Yeah.
He told us when we first got married.
Yes.
He said, when you get into an argument, you need to go drink a glass of water.
Yeah.
And then he went on this whole fucking tirade about how most Americans are like not hydrated enough some whole bullshit. But that advice has been really acute. And now that I understand more about what's happening when people are arguing, it has helped me understand why that advice is so good. Mm-hmm. Tell the people why.
Yeah. A couple of things are happening when you go get and drink a glass of water.
Like in the heat of the fight, in the middle of an argument, you just walk away and go drink a glass of water. Right? That's the situation we're describing.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so you're removing yourself from that environment. So you're removing yourself from active screaming or fighting, active feeling of like opposition with your partner. You're removing yourself from the room that might be bringing up those feelings. You're moving. There's a good chance that that's able to soothe a little bit of the like flight response going on. And then you're sitting still and you're doing something that you can only do when you're not in a threatened state, which is sit still and drink a glass of water. You can't do proper digestion if you're actively running from a threat, and it reminds your body that you're safe, that you're okay. It starts to calm you down. A temperature change, so let's say you're having a glass of nice ice cold water, that's changing things in your nervous system. That can be very soothing. A temperature change is a big deal. You're taking time.
Yeah.
You're not talking. So you're maybe thinking or resting, and all of those things are going to help move your body through that really heightened activated state.
And Steven's a genius, but for whatever reason in my mind, he's like, and you're getting hydrated.
And you're getting hydrated. Win.
I'm sorry, Steven. No, I think that, if you came into my office right now, first you would be blown away by the amount of just random shit I have in there, but you would see on my computer a post-it note that says you must drink a glass of water. And I'm supposed to look at it when I'm mad. If I'm mad about something, just go drink a glass of water.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great advice. And you'll be hydrated.
And I think we all hear that and we're like, yeah, that makes sense. I understand if you're arguing, go drink a water. But there's like a physical, measurable thing happening in your body and in your mind when you take that break and go do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it could be take a walk. There's any number of things you can do, but I like that glass of water.
Because you're so dehydrated.
Yes. And you're probably dehydrated, honestly.
Yeah, you probably are. And you're probably grumpy. What else do you see your clients talking about?
An issue that I see come up a lot is that they're speaking different languages from one another. That even if you're from the same area, grew up in the same places, have very similar families, your families spoke different languages. That there were different things to say when you were fighting. There were different things about how to communicate, whether you communicated really directly, if you communicated more indirectly, that there were family rules, and that those things created a whole language, especially around the way that you talk about important things or avoid important things.
Oh my God, this was such an issue between the two of us for so long. It was such an issue.
And it's funny because you and I had so much in common in terms of our family environment, that we grew up in a similarly strict homeschooled environment, a Christian environment.
Rock on, dude. Fucking cool.
But we had what would seem like a very similar upbringing.
Yeah.
But we spoke very different languages, and not knowing that about each other led to basically every single one of our early fights. In fact, I'd say that it continues to contribute to stuff long down the road. It's not just early relationships that are dealing with that, but as we encounter new experiences, that's coming up again. So, do you remember the first big fight we had that was about that?
No. I don't think
that's
so.
good. It was about saying I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? I didn't know that was the first big one.
Yeah, it was one of our first big arguments, and it definitely came down. It might be the first, I'm not sure, but it came down to speaking different languages.
You said, I'm sorry you feel that way. Mm-hmm. I said, I was mad. I told you I was mad. I was probably not very nice about the way I said that
probably
I was mad.
Not.
I was super dehydrated. I was really, really dehydrated. dehydrated, and I told you I was mad, and you said, I'm sorry that you feel that way. And in my family, that was explicitly, that translated explicitly to go fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not my problem.
Yep.
That's not my fault. That's your issue. That's 100% you, bro. Go deal with that. Go away and deal with that.
And then you kept being upset by that. And I kept saying again and again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think we woke up the next morning and I continued saying, I'm sorry. And you kept saying, I can't believe you're saying that to me. You were so upset. And it took a little bit for us to get down to the bottom of what happened. So one thing that was going on is that in your family, that meant go fuck yourself. And my family didn't apologize. We never verbalized apologies. And saying I'm sorry was the best apology I knew at the time. And saying I'm sorry you felt that way.
Do you remember my favorite response to you saying I'm sorry? Because it was delicious. Just so good. I'd say, you are sorry.
Oh, yeah. It was not kind.
You are sorry. What a dehydrated thing to say.
What a dehydrated thing to say. And I was sorry. I did indeed feel so sorry. The other thing that was happening is that your family was very specific in the way that they apologized, which was that
It was methodical.
you couldn't even say, I'm sorry. You would have to say, I apologize for da 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 and name the thing. And then ask for forgiveness. Will you please forgive me? My family didn't apologize. And when I said, I'm sorry, that hurt your feelings, I deeply felt sad that I had hurt your feelings.
The miscommunication between us was definitely blown out of proportion by me, and it was just a result of me feeling very angry about a lot of things at the time. But I do like the way that a lot of that was framed in my childhood, because just saying that you're sorry, for me growing up, saying you're sorry had a lot more to do with how you felt about the consequences of your action, as opposed to just acknowledging that you were at fault.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Like, yeah, you're sorry that if you got caught. You're sorry that I'm mad that you did this thing. You're sorry that you're grounded now, or you're sorry that there are these things that are happening as a result that are negative. Of course you're sorry. Anybody in your situation would be sorry. Like, that's what...
And see, I just lived in a state of guilt, so I was always sorry. I did indeed feel bad for the things that I had done, even the things I hadn't done.
No, but but coming forward and saying, here's the thing that I did against you that was wrong, and asking for forgiveness for that named thing brought a lot of closure to the situation. And then it was done.
Yep.
Then it was over and we moved on.
Well, that was a brand new thing to me in your family. Another cultural difference in our families was that you didn't keep having the same arguments. And that was a huge relief when we started dating. I couldn't believe how it was years before we had the same argument. In fact, it's probably starting to be around drinking that we were having the same argument. That didn't occur again and again, because the way that you communicated, I think, was so effective. And when I learned to do that, that was effective. But in this situation, I was being very earnest in the thing that I was saying, and you were not able to hear me. We're both angry, but you were not able to hear me because that wasn't the language of your family. And I was using the language that I had learned, and we were completely missing each other. And our continued missing each other was escalating and escalating and escalating the situation. And I see that happen so often, where clients don't understand what their partner means when they say the thing that they're saying.
Yeah.
And they miss and miss and miss each other until it's turned into this huge thing where they have assumptions about what the other person meant. And based on that assumption, that partner keeps being dug deeper and deeper into that hole of something that probably has nothing to do with what's going on.
You've got to bring that back to a place of reflection, right? We're not angry and arguing right now, but I am opening this discussion, right? Like we have to
Exactly.
sit down and talk about this.
And that's, again, to that importance of talking about what you're fighting about when you're not fighting, when you're no longer
Yeah.
fighting. You've got to talk about it.
Okay, go ahead and you hold the talking stick and tell me what you're feeling and why you're upset.
Yep.
Right? And if we're doing that in good faith in a productive way,
Yep.
then we can actually understand where the other person is coming from.
Yeah.
And this is a hell of a lot easier if you guys have been thanking each other for the bullshit you do for each other around the house. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you've built up a lot of goodwill there to be able to sit down and have a tough conversation in a safe environment. I feel seen here. I feel heard and acknowledged and valued here. So I can make the assumption that my partner being upset with me doesn't mean that they don't see or value me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that you came from similar places, and if you didn't come from similar families, this will probably be a stronger issue, but it really doesn't matter. We all speak a different language, and we have to learn our partner's language and the language of their family.
You know, I've had the privilege of officiating 2 different weddings now.
You have.
It's very exciting. I'm an ordained minister from www.universallifechurch.com.
True.
Costs like $30. Highly recommend it. I should have people fill out a translation form. How did your family communicate? How did your family problem solve?
This would be great. Honestly, it is an issue. I tell that story about the I'm sorry thing so many times in counseling to help illustrate that, because it's something that comes up all of the time. So many clients have an issue where they are misunderstanding their partner and nobody asks. Nobody pauses to figure out what actually happened.
You're telling your client stories about me and I'm not getting a cash kickback.
I mean, we share a bank account.
Yeah, okay. All right. Fair. What else do you have for us? We've got a few minutes left. Can we cover one more topic?
Yeah. I have something that I think will tie in well with that.
Okay.
So the next step in learning, this is something else that Gottman talks about, I think, but it's also just something that we talk a lot about in different therapeutic settings, and it's learning how to communicate effectively, which is learning how to use I feel statements. A coworker of mine who I adore acknowledged one time, and I didn't even notice I was doing it, but that I started off almost every thing that I said that was like an opinion or a, hey, I think we should do this thing, with an I think or I feel statement.
Yeah.
And
It's honestly super effective.
It's so
especially
effective.
like especially in a professional environment too, like saying like I feel or I think instead of like stating your opinion like it's everybody's opinion.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Please go
No,
on.
no, this is perfect. It is effective. It is effective in so many environments, but it's going to be especially effective in your relationships if you learn how to do it, and it'll just become a part of the common language that you use. So what we tend to do when we're upset with somebody is say, you do this thing.
Yeah.
Another bad thing we do is that we tend to say, you always do this thing or you never do this thing. Hard and fast rule, really don't ever say always or never.
But for the listeners, let's do a little role play to show how effective this is, okay? Hit me with a I feel that statement. I feel...
Oh, yeah. I feel like...
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't feel that way. Like, who am I to tell you how you feel,
Yeah.
right? That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah,
because you're only
exactly.
owning your own opinion,
Right.
right?
I'm telling you about an emotional state that I am having. That's just fact. That's just on me to report on.
Yeah.
The other person doesn't get anything to say
I
about
feel that you're a giant poo-poo head.
this. That is not an effective way to use an I feel statement, but I do have a great example.
Okay, let's hear it.
So something that might be said in a relationship is you never take out the trash. Now, what does that immediately do?
It made me go, oh, no, I took out the trash like yesterday.
You got defensive,
Yeah.
even though you got defensive in a pretty kind way. But if I say you always do this thing or you never do this thing,
Yeah.
your human response every single time will be to think of the one time that did or didn't happen. Will be to think of the one exception to what I just said. Because your human response when I tell you something about you and it's bad is to defend it. Because I want you to love me. I want you to care about me. I want you to see the things that I do. I want you to value me. So when I say, Price, you never take out the trash. First of all, I'm not saying what I actually want to say, which is the trash is full and I need help.
Right.
But I'm telling you something about you. And it is now, I think, not your fault that the first thing you're going to do is say, yes, I do. That is our natural human response. And if you regularly tell your partner things like, you do this thing, you don't do this thing, of course they're going to defend themselves. That's human.
And you give them no room at all.
They don't now get to join a conversation with you. They don't now get to problem solve with you. Their next move has to be to say something defensive. They have got to do inhuman gymnastics to try to jump around that comment and hear what you meant to say. But two things. One, if I just make a statement about what is going on, Price, the trash is full, can you help me? Much more effective. Now you get to jump in and be the hero.
No.
Okay,
I did it yesterday.
Or not. But if I am trying to communicate an ongoing problem, I said you never take out the trash because this has consistently happened. You're always forgetting to take out the trash. This is not actually true. Price is lovely and always takes out the trash. Anyway.
You're goddamn right.
When I say that, I set himself up to defend himself. He has to do that. But I'm noticing an ongoing issue. I do want to communicate that. So what do I say? I use an I feel statement, which is, Price, I feel like...
You're a piece of garbage.
And you should take yourself out.
Fuck yeah, that was great.
Price, I feel like you don't value taking care of our home when you don't take out the trash. And that really hurts my feelings.
That hits different, right? That's like, oh shit, I'm going to go take out the trash real quick.
Well, it sets two things up. When I say, I feel like you don't value our home when you don't take out the trash, and it hurts my feelings, I am immediately drawing up empathy from you. Mm-hmm. It's hard to watch the person that you love and care about. I didn't say anything about you. I didn't say that this is who you are and what you always don't do. But
you're talking about how my actions come across to you.
I said something about me and the way that I'm hurting. And the first thing that's going to do is draw up empathy in you. And the next thing it does is allow you to save the day. It sets you up to get to be the hero in that moment. You don't have to be defensive, but you can say, I do value you. I do care about our home. Let me take the trash out. And now you have done way more than take the trash out.
Yeah. I've reassured you that I hear you.
Yeah.
And I'm responding to you. I hear your bid. Right?
Yes. Yeah. You hear that need underneath because I've directly told you the need underneath. And now you take out the trash, and while those sorts of things are habit and routine and it takes time to practice, there's even a much better chance that you're going to remember to do those things in the future because you're going to think of this emotional thing and not the defensiveness.
Here's my little cocktail for a successful way to navigate an argument. Okay?
Oh, I love this.
An agglomeration of everything we talked about. You're in a fight. You're in an argument. Okay? You're taking a break.
To go get hydrated.
You're going to go drink a glass of water. You're going to come back. You're going to thank your partner for specific things that they have done recently that you appreciate. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to say, I feel that blank. And you're going to try to identify the root issue for you in that argument. I feel unseen. I feel unappreciated. I feel like we're not sharing the workload. I feel like you're not being considerate of me when it comes to our finances.
Yeah. And ideally you say I feel and then the emotional word. So I kind of messed that up too. I would say I feel uncared for when you don't take out the trash.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hit him with that. See how it goes.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments.
Absolutely. And thank your partner for having the conversation with you.
Ooh, that's a good one.
But that's a good one. I know this was hard. Thanks for sharing all that with me.
Yeah.
This has been rough between the two of us.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me a second to go get a drink. Let's talk about this. I want to hear you.
And that shows that you're not just trying to win an argument. You're trying to like rebalance the relationship.
Yeah, I see it all over social media, so I don't know. I never know what is on my social media just because I'm a therapist or that everybody's getting to see. But I do think it's really important life advice that, like, when you're arguing as a couple, it's the two of you against the problem, not the two of you against each other. And the more that you can both turn and face the problem side by side, the better. You guys are on the same team. You want the same things.
Yeah. Well, we just have a little bit of time left. I wanted to ask you, did you like my summary of how to navigate an argument? You know, we really condensed that down, boil this whole podcast down. Do you think that that's helpful advice for people? Drink some water. What was it? Drink some water. Hit them with a
Thank you.
Thank yous. I feel statement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then point to the cat.
The final bid.
I think that about sums it up. I do. I thought that was really beautiful. Thank you for contributing that.
Oh, don't start with me. Oh, don't start that shit with me. Okay, as we're kind of wrapping up, another huge shout out to Kyle over at the How to Be a Human Being podcast. I was really impressed with him as an interviewer. I thought that he brought something very different than me, like a very calm and calming sort of presence.
It was the first thing I said to you when I was done with the interview.
I remember.
What a great interview it was and how good he was at that.
Yeah, I was struck by that when I was listening to it. I definitely want to, if you're listening to this podcast, definitely check out Ashland's episode. Check out the other episodes.
Yep.
On his show. Highly recommend. And yeah, I think that about sums us up. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think that wraps it up. You really did that beautifully.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for your time, Ashlyn.
Thank you for your time, Price.
And we'll see you next time on I Married Your Therapist. God, do you think that people just think we just sit around thanking each other for shit all day?
We basically do.
God, if I, like 17-year-old me would think we're so fucking lame. Be like, where's the passion? The fuego, the spice.
That's
Jeez.
why your relationship was miserable.
Oh, okay.
Were you recording?
Yeah, I was
I didn't realize. I thought we were just talking. That was cold. I'm sorry.
That was cold.